All right, guys, we are back. We're doing some more tests. The point of these tests is to really prove that this camera is so great and can be used for everything, but we want to show some real results. And out in the field, what we're getting today, we're testing bird in flight video, and I have a mixture of autofocus and manual focus. Mostly some good results today. I had a couple of things where some weird conditions, a few things that didn't quite work, but overall, I would say, yeah, this is really good. I mean, if you have a good understanding of how a camera's autofocus system works, and you know when it will and won't work, and then you have tweaks, then you should have no problem. One tweak I've been using to greater effect back with the telephoto is the autofocus plus manual focus assist. It's really good for video. This morning, we went out to Presqu'île Park in Ontario, Canada, and it's a great place for birds. There were a ton of shorebirds, but they're still in nesting season, and the beach is limited access. It's roped off. So there were a lot of birds, a lot of cool migrants, but we couldn't get close enough to actually photograph them at all. But what did happen is a bunch of raptors came in, and it was very cool, and I'll show you how that went. So the first thing that happened is I'd heard peregrines were out there, and this one buzzed our heads, and there'll be a little more of that. I'm going to have a test on the bird in flight stills shooting, so look for that video on my channel. It'll be out either just before or just after this one. But here's the peregrine in motion. Now, you might get a little seasick here because this is 24 frames per second, and I'm filming in real time. But this is autofocus. This bird is so fast. If you know peregrine falcons, the autofocus did not lose it 1 second, and woof, it dives. Holy smokes. You can see how quickly that was. That was very fast, and we had no issues. Now, this is a longer view. This is one of my favorite clips I've ever taken. This is as yet ungraded, just our log footage. This is in 120 frames per second. It's very sharp. It's nice and stable. This is handheld. I would like to be on the tripod, but tracking flying birds on the tripod is tricky, and I didn't bring it. I had to walk a fair distance to where we were going, and I didn't anticipate doing a lot of video today. I wanted to be doing stills. And that, for me, is why I adore this camera. Because, yes, I would love a big cine camera and a big, full kit and the lens and everything. But this is a true rugged performance field camera that can just do anything when the mood strikes you. So that last Harrier clip was not shot in log. This was shot straight out of camera, and you can tell because the color profile. And the reason I got this is I was shooting stills, thought things looked good for a video try, and I just pushed the button. So I'm in autofocus, no chance to switch focus or anything. I just hit the button and it just records what I got, and it held on to the bird. I'm using tracking sensitivity all the way up with speed fast. So far it's doing a pretty good job. Had a couple weird misses, but let's get to this clip. This is a bit of a longer one, so I'll talk through it. This is amazing. This falcon, peregrine falcon, just getting bombarded by terns. Now, he's trying to eat something, probably the smaller shorebirds. You can see the heat haze on the horizon. You can see some cormorants out there. So again, this is handheld. Now, interestingly, this clip is actually in manual focus, not on purpose, but I have my video mode set to manual, and in the heat of the moment when I set it to 120, I forgot it wasn't in autofocus. Look at that. So what's cool about this with the manual focus is, had the autofocus been pulsing through that moment, I would have missed it. Now, it's probably not tack sharp. The birds this is 900 millimeters plus the, 25-30% punch in on the 120 crop for frames per second. But it doesn't need to be tack sharp. This is sharp enough to understand what's going on with the birds and just look awesome. And this is really cool footage of the peregrine. So the manual was cool here, and I would use manual focus again. I don't even think I realized it was in manual focus at this point. I thought it was tracking the birds. I have focus peaking enabled on the camera. Everything was going well. It was showing me that it was more or less in focus anyways. And I mean, the sun was out. Things were really bright. And I was so caught up in the action. This kind of started, I missed the beginning of the clip. I wasn't filming. And the falcon bombed the water to try to get away from them. But it was really cool. You can see, so all the birds are actually out on that island, and they kept coming in, but we weren't equipped to wade, and you're not allowed to wade out there yet. So hopefully in 2 weeks, just after the X-H2 gets announced, we should be allowed to mosey out there. He comes a little closer. The bird's a little softer at this point. Again, manual focus, and I wasn't really adjusting. But the one thing I like about manual focus is it's not hunting. So it's that is something why in my videos I say I still would use manual focus for most moments. Where's the bird? He went up here. Oh, there he is. I'm not sure where. I can't remember. Conversely, this is autofocus here. These are some cormorants. Again, handheld, 120. Nice and sharp and detailed footage. I was trying to keep my feet firmly planted and just rotating at the waist. These birds fly pretty fast, and as you can see by the size in the frame, they were not that far away. So this was tough to track. Like you can see, I never really even get comfortable for 1 second. I mean, in another world, had I thought this clip out, it would have been nice. Eventually, I do let them fly out of frame, but this is something where I would either like to pan smooth with them or just let them go. But I wasn't thinking about that in the moment. I was just trying to stay on them. But the autofocus did a great job. It never loses them once from what I remember reviewing this prior to the video. Pretty good. Pretty good. And they start to ascend. These are Canadian penguins, I've decided. You can see the heat haze in the background too. I mean, the horizon is just a choppy mess. So image quality shooting out in the sun over the water is always going to be hard to assess, but this is really cool. Once you get rid of the horizon too, the flight's nice because it looks more steady when you're not like bouncing up and down with the horizon there. So again, autofocus. I've had some people leave comments say, oh, well, there's no background. I say, okay, well, you know, ask an X-T4 to track birds like this with no background and you'll probably have more issues. There's lots of cameras that can't do it, even if it should be simple. And as I've said before, I don't care if the autofocus can track the most complicated things. For me, I want the autofocus to be able to track this, so I don't have to use manual focus the whole time that I'm filming in the field, because it does get mentally tiring to try to track things. And especially in a situation like this, manual focus is really difficult because I have nothing to acquire. I can't tell if I'm too close or too far, because with normal focus peaking, if there's foreground and background, you can kind of see what's going on where. But in a case like this, you can't. So I cut that clip there. What's this one? Okay, we got some shorebirds. This was also autofocus. Everything in 120 from here on out will be autofocus. It lost it there, lost it there. These are very small, extremely fast birds at a distance. But I would say, so that's a clip, you know, again, I wish I were in manual focus if I really cared about that clip. They were coming and going. I wasn't particularly worried about it. But just to show you, it doesn't always hit, and I have had the most problems with the video autofocus in slow-mo, which most of these clips are. I think this is a cormorant again. This is autofocus. It's doing a pretty good job. It's still on him. I think he lands. Yeah, okay, so it lost him there. Gets back on him. It's not a good clip anyway. He's too far away. But gives you something. What do we have next? What's this guy? So solo cormorant. This one goes back and forth. I've watched this clip. So this is an example of like where it's not working great, which is funny. I wonder if the flock of birds earlier had a better job because there was more mass. Maybe the camera was like detecting that bigger group. I mean, the thing I would say about the autofocus, again, I'm reviewing this camera as an aspiring, let's pause it there for a second. I'm reviewing this camera as an aspiring semi-professional. I don't get paid for my work right now. I'm a serious hobbyist and trying to really accelerate my growth quickly. So someone might come on here and complain how bad the autofocus is. I would look at a clip like we just saw with that cormorant and say, if you use 30 seconds of that cormorant flying on his own, you're probably a bad video editor. What I probably want from that is 4 or 5 seconds. Do I have 4 or 5 seconds that are sharp? Yes. And that's why I really like this camera, especially for the quick record button, depending what settings you want, which I didn't use here. But if you're shooting stills and you see a moment and you think, you know, this might be some good B-roll, that cormorant footage would not be an A-roll clip. That would be a scene setter, just something trying to establish, you know, look at the bird here. So that's something that I don't need it to hold the whole time. Would it be nice? Sure. But again, I think people comparing this camera to an A1 or a Z9, I don't know what you're talking about. This camera costs less than half, in some cases almost a third what those cameras cost. And those cameras still have not shown that they're completely reliable in those cases. I posted a video yesterday with R5 footage, and the R5 was maybe better. Still had issues though. It wasn't perfect, and again, significantly more expensive. Now, this moment is a combination. So here we were using autofocus. Again, these turns are crazy. I saw them attack vultures, peregrine falcon, bald eagle, which I got stills of, but not video. And then a birder explained to me, he was looking through his scope. I couldn't even see what this was. And he mentioned that there was this great blue heron. I think there might have even been a pair of herons. Perins? And they were going at him. So here it was in autofocus, but it was so small that the camera, just even getting him in frame took me quite a while. Luckily, the bird was slow. So you can see it kind of has him. I was using the manual focus assist to help here. I don't think I really got this clip to a place where I liked the sharpness until later. I wouldn't say any of it's ruined if this was something like really amazing. But again, that's one of the nice things about shooting at 120 frames per second is you have a little bit of leeway, because it takes, like, every second you record takes 5 seconds. And when you're editing clips, you don't need that much footage. So in this, I have probably 2 minutes of footage of this bird. And even if I only figured it out, like here, it's a lot sharper. I'm much happier with it here. And again, I was using the manual override to try to fine tune, letting the autofocus help do it, and then using the manual focus once I got there, because the autofocus did a better job of initially finding the bird, but I didn't want it to jump back and forth. So I think that's a case where the manual helps, and I was able to get that mood. I probably got it a little bit earlier if I needed it, but it gives me footage to work with. So another good test from the field. I feel like I'm really starting to understand how this autofocus system works. There's nothing in the price range that's comparable for video autofocus, in my opinion, not for wildlife. So really happy with it. I think this has been a really good option. And yes, you can use the autofocus straight out of the box, expecting it to work on everything. No, I wish it were better, and I think firmware might improve it, and I'm all open for improvements. But I've used 5 different cameras this year, and this is a good one, and this can do the job. And if you're not looking at it that way, then you're kind of missing the point. So see how the stills worked. Bird in flight, see how that worked out in the other video, and then you'll kind of have something to compare against.